Our social studies continues with lesson 4. This is called the Changing Northeast. You should be on page 200 of your book so that you can follow along. This time period we're in now, it takes place between 1920 and the year 2000. Our focus is going to be, what is a megalopolis? I just love that word. What is a megalopolis? Here are our vocabulary: population, rural, urban, megalopolis, suburb, metropolitan area, commute. I think some of you, I taught these words when you were in second grade, so this is a review for you. And then there's two places, something called a Boswash and another place called Philadelphia. I think that you're familiar with at least one of those places. Here we go, the Changing Northeast. Read aloud. The historian named Richard Hofstadter wrote, "The United States was born in the country and moved to the city." You'll read about this move in this lesson. What in the world are they talking about? It was born in the country and moved to the city. Let's see if we can find out. The big picture. In 1994, 24 American cities had a population of more than 500,000 people. Oh, that wasn't much compared to now. Population is the number of people who live in a place. 4 of these big cities are located in the Northeast. The Northeast has the third largest population of the 5 regions. Remember, we studied the Southeast, now we're in the Northeast. So this is the third largest. Okay, so we're number 3. Yet it has the smallest area by far. So if we have the third largest population, but we have the smallest area, that's like saying we're trying to fit 200 people into our classroom. Okay, we have a small space, a lot of people. Okay. This means that people live much closer together there than they do in any other regions. Of course, some people in the Northeast live far apart in rural areas. I feel like Scooby-Doo. The word rural means of the countryside. Farms, fields, forests, and small villages can be found all over the region. In a rural part of the region, such as northern Maine or the Adirondack Mountains, you may be hours from a city. However, most Northeasterners live in urban areas. Urban means of the city. So we have rural meaning of the country, and we have urban meaning of the city. Urban growth is the key to this region. So it's telling me our cities grew, and that helped our area grow. All right, on to page 201. Let's go to the top. Why have cities grown? At the time of the American Revolution, more than 9 out of 10 Americans lived in rural areas. Most towns were very small. During the 1800s, many cities began to grow. By 1920, more than half of all Americans lived in cities. Why did this change take place? So they lived in rural areas, now they live in the cities. Why did that change? Industries and immigrants. You have already learned about the Industrial Revolution. New inventions allowed goods to be produced much faster. Business owners who built large factories needed workers, and these workers had to live close by. Some factory workers moved to the city from rural areas. Others were new immigrants to the United States. These new city dwellers made cities grow rapidly. The Industrial Revolution reached the Northeast first. As a result of this, the cities of this region had a head start in growing by growing, period. By 1850, for example, 10 American cities had a population over 50,000. 7 of them were in the Northeast. Many of these cities were on the Atlantic coast. As they grew, they came closer and closer together to form a megalopolis. A megalopolis is a group of cities so close together they can be thought of as one huge community. People go from city to city quickly and easily. Find this mega city on the map on this page. Why do you think it's known as Boswash? So let's take a look at it. Boswash. What do you think that stands for? Bos. Sounds like the capital of one of our cities. Right, Boston, Massachusetts. And what does wash sound like that you know? Well, Washington. So it's a mixture of Boston and Washington area. It goes from Boston all the way down to the Washington area. So they call it Boswash. And mine's not too clear here for you. All right, there's a picture of the railroad and it connects the cities. And there's our map. These are some of our northeastern states. We have Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey. There's Long Island, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts. There's that big little toe we saw before. Here's Delaware, and there's Maryland. Okay. All right, let's go on to page 202. Let's continue to read here. Cities and suburbs. Cities in the Northeast have continued to change. Around 1920, people began moving to suburbs. A suburb is a community just outside a city. Most people in suburbs work and spend time in the city. A city and its suburbs together are called a metropolitan area. Sometimes you'll hear them say metro, okay? But a metropolitan area, so that's a city and a suburb together. New forms of transportation made the growth of metropolitan areas possible. So the metropolitan areas grew because of new transportation. Subways, have you ever ridden on one? Railroads, have you ever ridden on one of those? And cars could carry people in and out of the city fast. People no longer needed to live close to where they worked. Instead, they could commute. Or we talked about in reading today, or we will, the comma and the word or. It's telling us what commute means. These are great context clues. They could commute or travel back and forth each day. A Philadelphia commuter. People are still moving from city to suburbs. Martha Woodall is now works as a newspaper reporter in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. But in 1993, she and her family moved to Cheltenham, a suburb northwest of the city. I usually drive into the city, Woodall says. The trip takes about 35 minutes each way. But my husband, who works different hours, turn over here, than I do, takes the train, and he gets to work a little faster. Why did she move? The place where we were living was getting too small for my two young children, she says. If we moved farther out of Philadelphia, we could afford a bigger house. When you live in a city, things are going to be more expensive. Commuters like Woodall are willing to trade extra travel time for more space. A city's future. The move to the suburbs has sometimes taken people and resources away from cities. Some industries that made the Northeast cities grow have moved to suburbs, other regions, or other countries. Andy Toy works for Philadelphia city government. He thinks the city is meeting these challenges. As large industries shrink, smaller businesses are driving Philadelphia's economy. The new companies are making medicines and computer supplies. And Philadelphia's port, remember we talked about a port, is a big plus for import and export. The port's where the boats come in, bring our supplies. Toy thinks that people will return from suburbs. As fuels become more expensive, people won't want to travel as far to work. I think you're going to see a flow of population back into the city. Well, why does this all matter? The cities of the Northeast have seen many challenges. In the future, cities will probably look different from the way they do today. Metropolitan areas may get bigger and bigger, while the city at the center gets smaller. Yet cities will remain the centers of trade and industry. They will continue to shape the economy of this region and to play an important role in our country. Main idea. In the 1800s, the United States population shifted from the countryside to the city. People moved to the suburbs in search of more space. And big cities today are still changing. So let's think about it. How did the Industrial Revolution help cities grow? Can you remember? The Industrial Revolution led to the growth of large factories that required many workers. All those new workers coming in contributed to the growth of the cities. Okay, next question. What is a megalopolis? I'll tell you, that's my favorite word of this lesson. It's a group of cities so close together that they can be thought of as one huge community. Question number 3. What makes cities so important to the Northeast? Well, big cities are the centers of trade and industry, so that's why those cities are so important in our Northeast area, because we need the economy we get from the trade and the industry. Question number 4. Classify your own community as rural, urban, or suburban and explain why. Well, since I can't hear what you're saying on the video, I will tell you that I live in a suburb. I don't live in the main part of the city. I kind of live outside, but I don't live out in the rural country where there's cows walking around. Although there are some farms close to me, but I'm still considered living in a suburban area. What do you think life would be like in the busy cities of a megalopolis? Well, I think if I lived in a big place like that, there'd be so many things to see and do, and you could go back and forth between those cities. On the con side of that, it might be a little crowded. Um, the crime rate might be higher, and so you have to decide where is the best place for you to live.